Hi guys! So tell me, is this a spud or a potato? Do we call money dosh? Oh, you don't know these words. Hold a sec. Catch that? Okay. So guys, if you are appearing for a spoken English test and you do not know these words, then you ought to know them now. Because in this lesson, we are switching from formal words to informal phrasal verbs that help you sound much more natural. My name is Michelle and I'm happy to have you with me. Okay, so as I told you that we are switching from some formal words to informal phrasal verbs. So informal verbs are usually used when you want to communicate more fluently and when you want to sound more natural, because there are some words that you often do not hear native speakers use while they're talking, okay? So what are those words? Let's look at them. Words like address, accelerate, cohabit, decelerate, discard, encounter. These are the words that you often do not hear native speakers use because they are very, very formal to be spoken. Okay, so what are the alternative options that we've got? Let's look at them. So the first one is put up. Now, is this a formal word? No, it's not a formal word. It's an informal phrasal verb. But its meaning is a formal verb, and that is to tolerate someone. Put up means to tolerate someone. So if you want to talk about someone whose behavior you just cannot tolerate, it's better to say, I just can't put up with this behavior. I don't know how does she put up with this behavior. Instead of saying that I can't tolerate his behavior, or I don't know how does she tolerate his behavior. Okay? Now we look at the next one that we have, and this is accelerate. So what does accelerate mean? It means to increase the speed, okay? Increase the speed of something. Now, if you want to talk about a car, okay, you would definitely say accelerate. Like maybe if the car is going to hit someone, you could say that the car accelerated towards her. Okay, understood. However, if you want to use this word in regular English to talk about everyday processes, like, if you want some process to get faster, okay, maybe you want some papers or documents to be signed quickly, you would say, I wish the process could speed up, instead of saying, I wish the process could accelerate. So you would say speed up. Here we have one verb and a preposition, which is the combination that forms phrasal verbs. Great. The third one that we have is to address something. Okay, now here we're not talking about the address, the noun, okay, which means that, the name of a location, where is it located, etc., etc. We are not talking about the noun, but we are talking about the verb address. So the verb address means that you want to deal with something, okay? So let's say there is a problem that you're facing and you want to deal with the problem, so then you address the problem. But if you're writing, you might want to say that they addressed the problem, okay, if you're writing a formal letter. But if you're talking to someone, address sounds very unusual, okay? So you might want to say that I quickly want to deal with this problem and not I want to address this problem. All right. Deal with. But if you are a CEO of a company and you're talking to your employees very formally and you're possibly given a speech, maybe then you might want to use address. But if you're talking generally to your friends, you'll say, I want to deal with this problem. Okay. So the next one that we have is to cohabit. Okay, so this word comes from two words. Co means two things coming together, maybe more than two at times. Habit means to live, okay? So when two people live together, that's when we say they are cohabiting, living together. All right, so we commonly use this phrase for people who are not married and they're still living together, okay? And we also call them living in, all right, if they're living together and they're not married. So you could say that they have been living in for 2 years, or they have been living together for 2 years, instead of saying they have been cohabiting for 2 years. This is something that you might want to write in an essay, okay, if the topic is cohabiting or something, but you wouldn't want to say it. Okay. So the next one that we have is to decelerate. Okay, now this is an opposite for accelerate. The pronunciation is a bit clever. It's decelerate. So like accelerate means to speed up, okay? Decelerate means to slow down. All right. So if you're guiding someone about directions to a particular place, you could say that, okay, you need to turn left and slow down and stop at the next spot or something like that. So that's when you use slow down instead of saying, okay, you need to turn left and decelerate. You might even, just slip the word into something else. So it's better you say slow down or speed up when you're talking about increasing or lowering the speed of something. Great. So the next one that we have with us is to discard something. So discard means simply to throw something away, and that's exactly the phrasal verb that you can use in place of the word discard. You could say throw away. So you could say that I want to discard, or I want to throw away all my old notes because I'm done with my exams. So throw away means to put something away because you do not need it anymore. Okay, so you throw it away. All right. The next one that we have is to encounter. Okay, now this is a very serious word, and you would often hear it in news, when two teams encounter each other or when two parties encounter each other, and most often when criminals encounter the police, okay, which means that they face them face to face. But we use encounter in common English when we are talking about someone coming across something, okay? So let's say you were checking something or you were cleaning a desk, you opened the door and you saw a picture. And you want to tell someone that you saw a picture in the desk while cleaning. You could say that while I was cleaning the desk, I came across the picture in the drawer. So that's how you can use encounter. As a phrasal verb, you would say come across. Now, if you met a person suddenly, you would not want to say, I encountered her in the restaurant, which is very, very negative and very, very serious. If you want to talk about it in a more general sense, you could say, I came across Rebecca in the restaurant the other day. All right. So the next one that we have is to erect. So erect means to build something up, okay? When you build up something. So this is the phrasal verb that you can use in place of erect. So let's say that there's this person, okay, who is erecting fence in the garden, which means he's putting up fence in the garden. So you could say he built up the fence in the garden, all right? Erect is used much more formally. Let's say you're talking about a historical monument. So you could say that the memorial or the war memorial was erected in 1950. So this is very formal, and you might want to write it on a paper instead of speaking it out to someone. And you could say, he was building up the fence around the garden. Okay, now we are done with the side, and we are going to look at the other words that we have for the day. So this word omit. Omit means to leave something out, and this is the phrasal verb that you can use for it also, okay? When you're not including something on the list, you're leaving it out. So if you have a list, okay, and you've added certain things to it, and certain things you're not adding, so you're omitting them, which means you're leaving them out. Okay. So what is it that you omit? You can omit anything, and if you want to leave something out in a sentence, you could say that, please fill up the form, but leave out the education bit. So this means that you're asking someone to fill up the form, but you want them to leave out the section which talks about education, all right? So instead of saying omit, you could say leave out, which is more common and more usual. Okay. The next one that we have is participate. Many of you must have already heard this word very, very often. You often participate in activities. So instead of saying that I'm participating in the games this year, you could say that I'm joining the games this year, or I'm joining in the games this year. So joining in would be the correct phrasal verb to replace participate. So you could say, I'm joining in the games this year. Okay. So the next one that we have is rebuke. So do you know what this word means? Okay, rebuke is to talk very angrily to someone. When you're very angry at someone, you rebuke them. And I often hear teachers rebuking students. Well, I'm an exception because I don't rebuke my students ever, but teachers often do that. But instead of using this word, which is very formal, you could say that tell over. That's the correct phrasal verb with which you can replace the word rebuke. Tell over. Don't worry, I'll tell you how to use it. Okay, so now you want to use it in a sentence. You could say that the teacher told over Mark for talking in the class, which means that she spoke very angrily to Mark for talking in the class. I'll repeat myself. The teacher told over Mark for talking in the class. Okay. So the next one we have is replace. Okay, so in this case, we are looking at the verb replace in the meaning, in the sense of the meaning when we, for example, there's a table here and I pick up the pen from this table and I go somewhere and I keep it somewhere else. I do not keep it back. But when I do keep it back, that's when it's replacing or putting something back. That's the correct phrasal verb to replace. Replace. Put something back. So when you put something back in its place, that's when you're replacing. So you could say that Mari always borrows my pens, but she never puts them back. But if you say Mary always borrows my pens, but she never replaces them, it'll be difficult for others to understand you and they'll be like, okay, that's not natural, all right? Okay, so the next one that we have is to resemble. Okay, now this is also a verb. It means to look like someone else, okay? If I look like someone, this means that I resemble them. Now the correct phrasal verb for resemble would be to take after someone, okay? To take after someone. All right, and if you want to use it in a sense, you could say that James takes after his father, that's why he's so tall, which means that James' father is tall and therefore he is also very tall because he takes after his father or he resembles or looks like his father. Great. Now return means to go back somewhere, okay? It's very natural and that's also a phrasal verb that you can use in place of return. You could say that, it wouldn't be great to say that I returned to the same restaurant last week. You would rather say I went back to the same restaurant last week. So return could be replaced by go back. So I went back to the same restaurant last week. Okay, now rise means to go upwards, all right? Rise means to go upwards. And this is the phrasal verb which you will use instead of rise. So if you want to say that the prices are rising, it'll be great to write that in a test or an exam. But if you're in a spoken English test, you would rather say that the prices are going up, but my wages are still the same. Yeah, that's a sorrow for most of the people. But it's better to say the prices are going up when you're talking instead of saying that the prices are rising. But you definitely can write that. It's not incorrect, but just a bit more formal. All right, now we come to the last one. And this word I really like. It means to sacrifice. So sacrifice means that just for the happiness of someone else, you give up something. So give up means that you leave something so that someone else can be happy. So sacrifice can be replaced by the phrasal verb give up. If you're sharing someone's story who sacrificed something for somebody, then you would say that she gave up her job to take care of her sister, which means she sacrificed her job to take care of her sister. If you're writing that, then you will say write sacrifice. But if you're speaking, you'll speak give up or she gave up. So you can obviously work on the tenses of all these phrasal verbs, because as you know that verbs keep changing tenses according to the correct tense for the situation, alright? So you can change the tenses for sure. Work on them, remember them, and use them. And I'm sure you're gonna reap great benefits after learning all these phrasal verbs. So don't be afraid of any spoken English tests. This is the key to sounding natural. Come back for more lessons with me. This is Michelle signing off. Bye-bye.